Once again, we are back in the house of Jack. Today we're talking about dark techno, what the Spanish call techno oscuro. Does that mean like dark wave or any of that stuff? No, we're talking specifically about techno music that has industrial influences. So here's an iceberg graphic of the dark techno thing. It's very rudimentary. We're going to start with noise music. This is self-explanatory. I'm not even going to mention artists. I have no idea. Industrial music. We're talking about things like Neubauten, Liaisons Dangereuses. Then it says Birmingham sound, and this is where we're talking about artists like Surgeon, Regis. The label Downwards was very instrumental in combining those industrial influences with the techno sounds of the USA. So while the USA was making this big warehouse techno with 909s, these folks sort of abandoned that sound in favor of the industrial sounds that fit more with their influences. The Birmingham sound was sort of the jumping off point for the rest of what's up top. So then it was sort of influenced in another wave we call the Spanish sound, which sort of incorporated break beats and a few other cliches. The Slovak sound, which took the whole sound and made it halftime and offbeat, what people refer to as offbeat techno now. And then up top you see the berghain sound, which is the ultimate sort of commercialization of that sound. Away are gone the offbeat kicks. It's all 4/4 and sort of brooding and with these big 7-step FM bell melodies, you know. But yeah, that's sort of the easiest way for me to give an intro to this episode today is to explain that most of the wall of sound, early knots, classic dark techno stuff came from that Birmingham sound, just sandwiched in there between industrial and the rest of the things that were influenced by it. So yeah, the Birmingham sound in general gave birth to the rest of these techno sounds based on a foundation of industrial and noise music. Today with me is a special guest, the man responsible for the Tunnel and the Dark Cloud projects, the only man I met here in town who is responsible for that sound, that wall of sound, that techno-industrial sound here in Minneapolis, my boy Ryan, aka Tunnel.
Thanks, buddy.
But before we get into that, a word from our sponsor. Oh, hi, it's your friendly neighborhood Gunjack. I want to introduce you to my production manager, who dictates my pace of work and keeps me out of trouble and on task. There's a little Romeo. He's a 10-year-old music critic with dodgy hips and opinions on absolutely everything. This may look like a commercial with the graphics and donation links, but we swear... Oh, okay, maybe it's a commercial. We're doing a commercial. So send us money to get him hip and joint supplements. And maybe an actual soft light box so I don't look like a washed out psycho. Also, I'm not just making beats on YouTube. You can buy my records on vinyl right now wherever fine electronic music is sold. If you prefer to support that way, it just means my singles and EPs will climb up the sales charts, so I appreciate it. I'm an independent artist living and working out of a small apartment in Minneapolis. I do all of this on my own, so any donations are greatly appreciated and will go to hip and joint supplements, cables, lights, plugins, assets, and things that I need to keep the show going. So the support of viewers and listeners like you makes a huge difference in our lives. Thanks so much, my pretties, and we'll see you next Thursday. So let's get it started. I got Ableton open here. I figure we can get a kick drum and a little zap noise going and take it from there. So we have something to work with. Remember, I've chosen this kick drum based on how dry and sort of staticky it sounds. Alright, let's get the zap thing going. Alright, now that we have a rhythmic portion done, we're going to use the TR8 to generate a clap sound, and then we'll run it through what you brought here. I'm going to give you the mic. Why don't you explain what you brought for us today?
Yeah, this is a really awesome distortion pedal by a shop called LEFA Pedals, I believe based in New York. It's 4 banks of distortion all running in parallel. So you have a rat distortion, a muff distortion, an octave distortion, and then distortion, which I think is probably a fuzz, but all unique circuits, and you just stack these on anything and it just sounds so sick. You can put almost anything through it.
Well, let's try it out on the clap then.
So with any recording session I do that's going to include a lot of distortion, I like to sample a few raw samples first, if possible, just to have a clean version of that sound. And that comes in later when you want to really perfect a mix. You can always go back to the raw sound. So
12 seconds later.
What do you think about layering them up, or do you want to use it as like a loop because it's already sort of...
Yeah, I think the issue is always variation, right? Like you don't want a sound to sound static. You want it to sound alive, and you want it to breathe.
Oh, you want some movement. Okay.
You want some movement. So you can do that any number of ways. You can stack it, layer it with different samples, maybe some randomization. You can cut it up. You can slice it to MIDI. You can do a lot of different things. You could even just loop it as is.
Okay, I'm just sort of slicing to the grid here. Let's see if we can get something on time. So we have some shakers set up on the TR8. Why don't you run it through the gangbang, and we'll gangbang some shakers here.
Let's do it. Let's get some shakers.
Yeah, I really liked one part of that when it got real high, so I want to kind of loop up that part in Ableton. All right, that sounds good, but it's quite robotic. So we're going to use the groove pool to put just a little bit of swing on there. But before we do that, we're going to change the warp from Beats to Complex Pro. Put all the formants down to 0 and the envelope all the way up. Because otherwise it doesn't sound right when you swing it out. I like to use the MPC swing. MPC 1654 is kind of the magic spot. Let's see how it sounds. Okay, I feel like this thing could use like a weird FM synth, just so we have something to tweak with the filters and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that down. All right, so now that we have that melody, I want to put a little grit on it. What do you suggest in Ableton for
the amp?
The amp effect? Just a stock effect here in Ableton.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. The blues and rock setting have been my go-to for drum distortion for a long time.
want to thank everybody for joining us today to figure out what the is dark techno. And next week we'll be doing what the is hard groove. I want to give a shout out to my man Tunnel from We Build Machines for coming out and joining me on this episode. And we'll see you next week on the House of Jack.